Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson is an ordained Centers for Spiritual Living minister serving the Centers for Spiritual Living Greater Baltimore community as our spiritual director. As a lifelong learner with a passion for self development, personal transformation, transmutation, and transfiguration, he has frequently been referred to as a Renaissance man and visionary New Thought leader who makes complex metaphysical concepts readily understandable and applicable. His mission is to live, move, and be an active member of society who serves to educate, elucidate, and emancipate people and communities to awaken and empower themselves. ACTIVE is an acronym that stands for authentic, compassionate, transparent, inspired, vibrant, and empowered. And he continues to live his bliss as a teacher, minister, author, workshop and seminar facilitator, visual artist, ASL interpreter, and ASL performing artist, mentor, father, grandfather, and more. I give you Reverend Dr. Ray.
Namaste and greetings, everyone. Good morning. Happy almost August. So as you've already heard today, we're finishing off July with this continued discussion about relationship. We talked about what it means to connect with God as nature and God as our neighbor. And today we are recognizing that that which God is, the one and only, is all there is. God is everything. It's all there is. There is nothing that can possibly exist outside of it because there is no outside to it. It's all there is. This means that everything and everyone, no matter the appearance of dualism or separation, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Everything and everyone is this one power and one presence. And because it's one with the one, as Heather says, it's one with the one as the one. There is only one, then we must already be in relationship with it, and it with itself as us and everything. Now, this relationship can either be discordant or harmonious by our own choosing, right? Take that in. God is all there is, but you can choose by your own manner of living to be in a discordant relationship with it. Think about it. We can have a discordant relationship with ourselves. Low self-esteem, shame, guilt, all that other stuff. I don't like me. I don't like you either. Nobody asked you. Well, who are you talking to? Well, I was talking to myself. Well, who do you think I am? Right? We have those inner dialogues where we berate and criticize and condemn ourselves. So if we're going to do that to ourselves, then of course we're going to do that with others. We're going to do that with others. And we're going to do that with others, including the one power and one presence. However, we could also choose for that relationship to be harmonious. So today we are going to dive into, well, what does that even mean to be in relationship? Relationship is the way in which two or more concepts, two or more objects or people are connected. That state of being connected. Now pause. You cannot be disconnected from the truth of what you are. You cannot be disconnected from God, from source, from spirit. It's all there is. However, you can live, move, and have your beingness as if you're not connected. You can choose to believe something about lack and scarcity and live based upon that. You can choose that. You can believe that. That could be your dominant paradigm of consciousness that moves you. Or you can recognize that you're infinitely connected. Spirit is infinitely connected with itself, as itself, through itself, by itself. Relationship, the state of being connected or having a bond, a relation in any number of ways. The ways in which two or more people or groups regard and behave toward each other. How do you behave towards yourself? How do you behave towards your neighbor? How do you behave towards the infinite, the divine, God? Breathe. There are any number, vast numbers of books out there on building relationships, everything from romantic relationships to friendships to the relationships we have with food. Catch that. Relationship that we have with food. Some of us have or have had discordant relationships with food. Some have or have had harmonious relationships with food. Now, why do I mention that? Because it is a relationship. How are we connected to it? How do we behave with it? There are those of us who have codependent relationships with family and friends. And there are those who have codependent relationships with food. Food is our medication, our addiction of choice when it comes to, I need to eat my pain. I need some food to comfort me. Now, take that into mind. However, I want us to flip this just a smidge in relationship to this idea of food, because we understand that food is a fuel for our body system. However, each various food group provides a certain thing for the nutrients of our bodies. And I want us to pause for a moment and think about all of our relationships in this light. What nutrients are you getting from the relationship you have with certain family members? Do they serve as a sugar? They hype you up, but then you crash. Do they serve as, green leafy vegetables? Roughage, it helps clear you out. Do they serve as, a citrus, like whatever it is? What does this relationship with this person, with this situation, with this environment, what is it doing in terms of providing fuel and nutrients to your system? Is it just empty calories? Breathe, recognizing that all of the relationships are valid and worth exploring deeper. All of them. In the Science of Mind magazine in November of '96, it says, a person's relationship to God should be direct, dynamic. Every person's mind is an inlet to the divine. There is tolerance. Yeah, I really don't like that word. There is tolerance. I said I really don't like that word. There is acceptance in this concept and inclusion. The infinite is all inclusive, all embracing, all comprehending. A person's relationship to the divine should be direct and dynamic, all inclusive, all embracing, all comprehending. That this person's mind is an inlet to the divine. Now, what this is saying applies to you. What is that saying to you? What does it mean for you to live based upon this? to know that there is a direct and dynamic power that you have in relationship. Okay, cool. I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. Okay, so let's breathe for a second. Because remember what I said, all relationships are valid and worth exploring. So I want us to think about for a moment, pause and think about how many relationships, if we were sitting in front of each other, how many relationships can you identify in your life today? And don't group them in terms of my relationship with my family. Literally break that down and say, well, I have 4 uncles that I am in a relationship with. I have 3 aunts. I have 2 great grandparents. Literally think about each of your relationships, because no 2 relationships are the same. No 2 relationships are the same. It doesn't matter if it's just you and you have 2 siblings who are twins. Your relationship with twin number 1 and twin number 2 are 2 different relationships, as is their relationship with you, because they are not the same person. They are 2 different people. And so how we relate varies person by person. How many relationships have you had over the years? Think about it. How many relationships have you been in? How many friends have you had over the years that you're no longer quote unquote friends with? Were there friends you had in grade school that you're no longer in communication with? Were there friends you had in college who you're no longer in communication with? But they were relationships, they were friendships or acquaintances that you had at one time. How many have you had over the years? What kinds of relationships are they? Are they best friends? BFFs? Are they casual acquaintances? Are they friends with benefits? What kind of relationships are they? How many of them are healthy relationships? Bless you, Tracy. How many of them are healthy relationships? How many of them are superficial relationships? How many are deeply meaningful? What does it even mean to be in a deeply meaningful relationship? And how conscious are you of them and the mutual impact and influence of those connections? Meaning you impact and influence them just like they impact and influence you. Relationships are yin yang, give, take, inhale, exhale, speak and listen. How conscious are you of them? How conscious are you of this mutual impact and influence? And how often do you recognize and consciously choose to relate to something or someone as God? Recognizing that the divine is what is in conversation with Heather, not just Ray. Ray is having conversation with Heather, of course, but it is also God having conversation with Heather. God having conversation with God as Heather. God interacting with itself. How often do you pause and recognize and consciously choose to relate to someone or something as the one power and presence? Okay, so let's do a real quick relationship via the history and development of New Thought. Now, the main thing I want to point out is it's very easy for us to single out and say, oh, Ernest Holmes, Ernest Holmes, Ernest Holmes. Oh, Ernest Holmes. That's where we are. But isn't that related to all of those others? No matter where the development, no matter where things occurred, aren't they all connected? Isn't Ernest Holmes, can you find a direct line from Ernest Holmes to Plato? Can you find a direct line from Ernest Holmes to Emmett Fox or George Fox? You may not even know who George Fox is. Doesn't matter. Can you follow a line somewhere on here where 6 degrees of separation connects Ernest Holmes? Well, clearly, What did we already say? God is all there is. So every branch, every school of thought, every teacher, every healer, all of these exist within the one. They are the one in expression. Therefore, they are all connected. Therefore, they are all in relationship of one type or another with one another. Now, what does that have to do with you? It affords you the opportunity of being open at the top. It affords you the opportunity of recognizing that there is vast information and wisdom from every possible avenue of the divine. It need not be one simple person placed on a pedestal. It need not be one teaching placed on a pedestal. Now, granted, this is our teaching. And yet, being open at the top means we glean and find truth and wisdom through every avenue of the divine, because we are in intimate relationship with it and as it. So, can we talk to God on page 75 says, I believe that God is to each one what that person is to God. Say, what? What you just say? Willis, what you just say? I believe that God is to each one what that person is to God. What? Remember, Ernest Holmes said that the only God we would truly, intimately understand is the one that we embody. So when you embody the divine, then that which you are embodying, that which you are being, is that which God knows as itself in divine bond and relationship. I believe that God is to each one what that person is as God. The divine nature must be infinite. We know only as much of this nature as we are willing to embody. How much of it are you willing to embody? How much of it are you willing to embody? Because see, embodying it in mind only isn't truly embodying. It doesn't say think it, head it, thought it. It said embody. Bring it into the very body temple, which means live, move, have your beingness as it, and act accordingly. Treat and move your feet. When it is embodied, it changes how you show up and how you act. Breathe. Recognizing that anytime you are looking into the mirror, you are looking into the very eyes of God. The eyes of God looking at itself. Wherever I am, God must be. Not just with me, but literally as me. Wherever I am, God must be, because God is me. There is only what it is. And so wherever you are, it is there as you. Breathe and recognize what are the ramifications of that? What are the consequences of that? What does it mean to be accountable to that level of relationship? What does it invite you to do differently as you show up to yourself? In A Course in Miracles, there's a quote that's often attributed to Rumi that says, your task is not to seek for love, but to merely seek and find all of the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. Now, what does this mean? It means love is already there. If you don't see it, then for some reason or another, whether it's because of mass consciousness or your individual consciousness, there has been a barrier constructed to prevent you from recognizing it, because it's there. God is there. If you don't feel it, you're not aware of it, then find the barrier, find the belief, find the paradigm, find the consciousness that is obstructing your ability to recognize what already is present in, through, and as you. There is nowhere that we need to go or look. There is no book we need to read to find love or harmony or the divine. It already is right where you are. It always has been, it is right now, and it will forever be that. But once again, we choose discordant, disconnected, harmonious, and connected. We get to choose. So find any of the discordant paradigms and dissolve them, dismiss them, transcend them, whatever it is that you need to do to recognize the truth of your being. If not, then we will continue to do what we are conditioned to do, which is look for love in all the wrong places, to continue to have mistrust, to continue to have miscommunication, to continue to have fear, to continue to have betrayal, to continue to have missing pieces. Because what we are doing is allowing those things to remain without moving through them, without healing them, without transcending, without transmuting them. It shows up. What is ours to do? Where is love? Where is love in this? Because I know it's there. It has to be there because God is ever present. So where, how? How do I anchor? How do I ground? How do I remember principle and come back to principle and then shift the external condition that I'm experiencing? Fear. How do I shift the external condition? Lack of trust. How do I shift the external condition? I don't deny the external condition, but how do I shift it, heal it, reconcile it, and find the innate divine harmony that is ever present? Breathe. This, in fact, is one of those areas in my own life where I find my own personal work. Because over the years, there have been a great many trials and tribulations, whether they be with family, my parents or my siblings, whether it be with grief and death, whether it be with the relationship with my sons or the lack thereof for those of my sons who don't communicate any longer, whether it be with the ever-changing relationship with my grandchildren as they grow into their own adulthood or their own teenage years to eventual adulthood. Relationships morph and change. There are those that you feel that bond and then they die. There are those you feel that connection and then they leave. There are those that you communicate with often and then you don't. There are those you communicate with very deeply and then it's superficially and then it's barely anything at all. It's no longer nourishing. It's no longer what you once had. People you used to see often, you rarely see now. Grief, sadness, abandonment, all of these things can come up from relationships. And yet, throughout all of it, comes back to the recognition, there is only that one power and one presence. And so how I relate to the memory of my dogs, how I relate to the memory of my childhood home or my childhood city of birth, how I relate to friends of past and or present, how I relate to them is entirely up to me. I choose what to do with that. I choose. So if I refuse to move through the energy of it, it's not about them. It's about me. Breathe. The life and teaching of Jesus was to show the intimate, immediate personal relationship that we all have with life itself, which is within us and around us, moving through us, and actually is life living life as itself. What does that invite us to know? What does that invite us to be? What does that invite us to call into being? Especially when we feel the grief, the sadness, the mourning of. Now, it's important to recognize we say things like in loving memory, because this person has died, this relationship is no more. And yet, relationships never end. Breathe. Relationships never end. See, just because my mom is dead doesn't mean the relationship is over. Just because my father is dead doesn't mean the relationship is over. Just because some of my children no longer speak to me does not mean the relationship is over. Relationships change. And the manner in which we relate to people, to memories, to experiences, etc., they change, but they never end because the relationship God has with itself never ends. So you may never speak to someone ever again, but that connection has already been made. That connection through spirit cannot be severed. So while you may never see them physically again, you may never speak to them again, they are on the other side of the planet doing whatever the other side of the planet is doing. You may not even consciously think about them. Nonetheless, the relationship, spirit with spirit, harmony with harmony, love with love, is ever present. Ever present. And because of that, as Fred Rogers says, if you could only sense how important you are to the lives of those you meet, there is something of yourself that you leave at every meeting with another person, whether that is a casual encounter, whether that is a deep, meaningful conversation, doesn't matter. Every interaction, every train you have ever been on, the people you pass, the plane, the people you see, the people you don't even see, but they see you. You leave some energetic something with all of them, just as they do upon you. Spread love is the invitation. Spread harmony, spread truth, spread what you know to be the truth of yourself, and about them. Spread it so powerfully that it changes and transcends the very cells of their body, till it changes and transcends the very policies of every government on the planet. Change, spread. Live, move, and have your beingness in such a profound way that you can't help but to up-level everything and everyone. Ernest Holmes says in the home study course, God is all there is. There is nothing else. Whether it be a bird, a beast, a fish, a tree, a person, or an archangel, God is still all there is. All things are manifestations of the one presence, the one power, and the one life. This is the secret of secrets. The thought and the idea of God must become warm and intimate and colorful in your consciousness. A sense of the indwelling, all-dwelling presence must be real and immediate, for there is no there, only here. And there is no then, only now. No tomorrow, only today. There is no place where you, the individual I, leaves off and God, the universal I am, begins. There is only God, and God in you, as you, and the two are one. Seek then to cultivate this divine, indwelling, all dwelling presence, for it will respond to you, and you will know that you are not and never can be alone. May all the power in the universe be with you and as you, even as the divine light casts its radiance before you, and infinite love guides you on your way. Breathe. This week's practice, journal. How would you describe your relationship with God over the years? Share in some form of narrative as if you were talking about someone that you met. Share how this relationship has changed over time and what caused the changes. For example, I was around 4 or 5 when I heard about God. There was this TV program, Rex Humbard and the Humbard family, and they were talking about him. He seemed cool. Years later, when I met him, I found out that he wasn't as cool as people made him out to be. He had so many rules about being his friend, getting his support, and his protection, right? Share some form of narrative about how your relationship has changed, what it means to be in relationship with God. And then number 2, have a conversation with 3 people about what this quote means from Robert Frost. We dance in a ring and suppose, but the secret sits in the middle and knows. And then, with those same 3 people, what does it mean to honor the divine in all, especially those that you may not like or those you may not approve of their behavior? For example, how do you honor the divinity of the person who is a radical homophobe, a racist, a sexist, while you clearly do not accept or approve of their homophobic, racist, sexist rhetoric or behaviors? How do you practice seeing God and relating to God in them nonetheless? Breathe. This week's declaration or affirmation, I will say it first. And if you feel in alignment with it, then say it with me on our second go round. My relationships with everything demonstrate my relationship with God. And together, my relationships with everything demonstrate my relationship with God. Breathe. Stuff. So in this moment, let us breathe and anchor in prayer, recognizing that just because this thing we call Sunday service is coming to a close, we know that the manner in which Spirit in service to itself continues. For there is no tomorrow, there is only today, there is only now. And so Spirit acting upon itself, Spirit loving itself, Spirit giving of and to itself occurs right here and right now. All of the change, all of the healing, all of the power, and all of the presence that we desire to experience are right here and right now in how we anchor and ground in our mental equivalent, in our thoughts, in our words and communication, in our emotions and our feelings, and in our actions and how we show up. Knowing that that is who we are, what we are, and how we are, I gratefully surrender this unto the law, knowing that from the beginning of service, as soon as Heather opened her mouth, the law said yes, and it was answered prayer. As soon as Jesse hit that first note, the law said yes, and it was answered prayer. And all the way through, every sign, every announcement that Tracy made, all of it, all of it, all of it, all of it, and even now, the law says yes, and it is answered prayer. And to that I say, it is good, I am grateful, and so it is. Namaste, blessings, much love and appreciation to everybody.